when Schiff led that first impeachment against Trump for freezing weapons to Ukraine, Trump ended that impeachment with the highest approval ratings of his presidency. So that's Schiff's track record in taking on Trump. And of course, the real reason was because he lied to the public and pretended that he had seen secret evidence of a Trump-Russia conspiracy, and did so because he was on the House Intelligence Committee, so he could say, I've seen the evidence, I just can't tell you what it is because it's classified.
Yeah. I think it was anti-Semitic that they kicked him off. This is an attack on Jewish men. Swalwell. Oh man. Well, let's kind of on that note, Aaron. There's been a really significant intervention in the long-standing Russiagate debate. It really wasn't a debate. We always knew it was a hoax, but now you're getting so much mainstream validation. How does it feel to be validated by mainstream outlets like the Columbia Journalism Review? Jeff Gerth, veteran Beltway journalist, has published a 24,000 word piece on Trump Russia, the press versus the president, part 1. And this is in the Columbia Journalism Review. So it absolutely has to be taken seriously, unlike the Grayzone, because we're conspiracy theorists. And it's causing conniption fits, just complete outrage among some of the key voices of Russiagate, Aaron. So what's in this piece? How do you feel about it? Do you feel validated? And
I don't need to be validated, Max. I don't need to be validated for challenging the dumbest conspiracy theory of all time, that President Putin had brainwashed Trump, blackmailed him, and used compromat to get him to do his bidding, all while, duping millions of Americans into voting for Trump via sophisticated social media memes and email hacks. I mean, and of course, while also fueling this culture where it was good to encourage war with Russia. So helping to give us the Ukraine crisis that we're in right now. So I don't need to be validated for challenging that because the evidence wasn't there and it was so ridiculous and dangerous. But what Jeff Gerth has just done, and Jeff Gerth is a nearly 30-year veteran of the New York Times, highly decorated, won the Pulitzer, all kinds of awards. He's just published this 20,000 plus word article, 4 parts, looking at the media's coverage of Russiagate and just how they got it so wrong. And he goes through story after story where the media pushed fake Trump-Russia innuendo that was fed to them by Democratic Party operatives and intelligence officials. And even when countervailing evidence came out, either at the time or later, they just wouldn't report it. And Jeff Gerth goes through example after example after example, and it's devastating. And he does it in a very dispassionate, sober way, except for at the end when he writes a note where he says, he explains the kind of reason why he wrote this article, which is that he's a veteran of the media. He respects the craft of journalism, and he was very worried about what was being done to journalism via Russiagate, where it was turning the media into a complete joke. I mean, not to say that it was just Russiagate that did that, but just the level of hackery and fraud to him was very worrying. And that's why, since no one else was doing any reflection, there was no kind of mea culpa like there was after the Iraq WMD scam. He felt that he needed to do this. And the result is, I think, a real contribution to seeing how Americans were subjected to exactly what they were told Russia was doing to them, which is a massive disinformation campaign. And this article is predictably angering the people who propagated that disinformation campaign. But of course, they have no substantive response to it because it's all true. They took part in a massive fraud. And finally, one of their own is calling them out.
Yeah. So and as we've been pointing out week after week, this wasn't just about Trump Russia. This is about greasing the skids for the Ukraine proxy war. This is a war narrative using bogus propaganda to turn the U.S. public into a braying mob demanding not just that Trump be impeached, but that Putin be bombed and Russia be regime changed. So here's someone who knows something about regime change, David Frum, soft-handed neocon chicken hawk, who's been welcomed as part of the resistance in Washington, which includes No Shortage, run by liberal Democrats, but he was the former speechwriter to a right-wing Republican, George W. Bush, stating that Russia helped Trump win the 2016 presidential election. Trump welcomed Russian help. Trump's intimates sought even more help. His intimates? Trump's campaign manager shared information. He shared information. All repeatedly lied about it. In office, Trump supported Russian policy goals.
Yeah.
Like not giving offensive weaponry to Ukraine, as Obama also did. Saved you 24,000 words. So he's like, don't read the piece. Don't look in there. Trust me, because Iraq has WMDs and is part of the axis of evil. Trust me, I'm a neocon.
That second last line where Frum says that in office, Trump supported Russian policy goals, that captures how dangerous Russiagate was.
Yep.
Because at the same time as people like David Frum were insisting that there was a massive conspiracy between Trump and Russia and that Trump was doing Putin's bidding, Trump was actually enacting policies that massively escalated tensions with Russia. But because the media and partisan hacks like David Frum were so wedded to their narrative that Trump was a Putin puppet, that incentivized them to look away from what Trump was actually doing. So there wasn't any attention paid to things like Trump tearing up vital nuclear arms control treaties like the INF Treaty, the Open Skies Treaty, almost killed the New START Treaty, which massively escalated tensions with Russia and played actually a major role, I think, in giving us the Ukraine war. And also, Trump, when he came into office, he was accused of being a Russian puppet. So he was incentivized to try to prove his accusers wrong. So what did he do? He approved weapons to go to Ukraine that Obama wouldn't send. And when he briefly froze those weapons, he was impeached by Adam Schiff, who said we have to aid Ukraine so that we can fight Russia over there. We don't have to fight them here. And what Russiagate did was enlisted millions of liberals, and you can say a lot of progressives too. For example, all the progressives in Congress, including Bernie Sanders, in the agenda of neocons like David Frum. And it also undermined their ability, if they ever wanted to try to stand up to the actual militarism that Trump was pursuing toward Russia. And so right there, he's capturing how dangerous his conspiracy theory was. It wasn't just dumb. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was dangerous. And it played a major role in giving us now this war in Ukraine because it completely criminalized diplomacy with Russia, as the late Stephen F. Cohen constantly warned about. Over deaf ears. And, by the way, that's the topic of my forthcoming book, which will be out this year, how Russiagate helped give us the Ukraine war. And no surprise at all, the same people who fell for Russiagate and pushed Russiagate are also diehard supporters of the proxy war now.
Yep. And how few of them have ever picked up a gun and seen the face of battle. I mean, they're all chicken hawks.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Here's one of our most esteemed regime propagandists, another David Korn. CJR and Jeff Gerth devoted 24,000 words. Apparently the length of it means that it's bad. When, if you could conjure up that many words, it kind of means that you're taking on a gigantic hoax that's just so massive. I mean, it could have been, your book is going to be more than 24,000 words.
Oh yeah.
They devoted 24,000 words to a piece. I could kind of do a David Korn voice, to a piece criticizing media coverage of the Trump-Russia scandal and totally missed the point of the scandal. Worse, they bolster Trump's bogus self-serving narrative. Please read an RT, my critique of is RT. Oh, is that Russia Today? Is this
so I mean, this is self-serving from David Korn, because when he says that Gerth missed the point of the scandal, what he means is that Gerth is focusing on the fact that the media said there was a conspiracy between Trump and Russia, and there was no conspiracy, and they simply just buried all the countervailing evidence. And David Korn is saying you're missing the point. He said the point is that Russia attacked our election and that Trump welcomed it. Well, that wasn't the point when Russiagate was happening. People like David Korn were saying that there was collusion between Trump and Russia, and that Robert Mueller was going to prove it. David Korn even co-authored a book called Russian Roulette that is based around the fabrications of Christopher Steele, the top conspiracy theorist really in Russiagate, because his dossier of conspiracy theories was so influential. So now, in a self-serving way, David Korn is changing the narratives to something like that Russia attacked our election and Trump didn't stop it. And Trump welcomed it. And of course, the idea that that Russia attacked our election and waged this massive interference campaign, that's also undermined by all the available evidence. And Gerth doesn't go into that, but I have, for anyone who's read anything I've written, all the evidence there is that this is part of the Russiagate scam, since a lot of it comes from the same people, Democratic operatives and intelligence officials. But this is a really important reckoning, and no wonder it's angering people like David Korn. And next week on Pushback, I'll be interviewing Jeff Gerth to talk to him about this piece.
Great. I'm looking forward to that. Here's a portion of David Frum's piece that I wanted to highlight. It's hilarious.
Corn.
He says he's referring to Jeff Girth. He defines the Trump-Russia affair by only two elements of the tale: the question of Trump-Russia collusion with Moscow, which is kind of a big element of the tale, and the unconfirmed Steele dossier.
Unconfirmed.
This is exactly how Trump and his lieutenants want the scandal to be perceived. That's David Corn, not From, but they're the same now. Even though Corn once wrote a book about how From was a huge liar and the Bush administration lied us into Iraq. They both want to lie us into war with Russia. But this is the amazing part. David Corn, wrote a whole book about how the Steele dossier was the mother lode that exposed Trump-Russia. He was one of the first journalists,
right.
If not, he was the journalist to leak the Steele dossier.
He was. He had
was
the first
gathered by Christopher Steele along with Jane Mayer and all these other Washington liberal bigwigs at the Tabard Inn.
Yep.
And Christopher Steele handed out copies of the dossier, and they thought that they were getting what would be the ingredient, the secret sauce for the impeachment of Trump. So now he's saying it's unconfirmed. And how dare you talk about what I've been talking about for years that I based like a big part of my career on.
I didn't realize that meeting between Christopher Steele and these U.S. journalists like David Corn was at the Tabard Inn. What a desecration of a holy place! Like the Tabard Inn.
Anyone can go in there. I mean, I think they should have a no neocons policy. I'm for that segregation. Yeah. I don't think neocons should be allowed anywhere except for like a padded room, but in like, they should just be renditioned to somewhere. But
look, this is a really good point. The first article promoting Christopher Steele was written by David Corn, who called him a professional, highly respected foreign intelligence officer who was deemed to be credible. And that was by David Corn. So David Corn promoted Christopher Steele, gave a copy of his dossier to the FBI just to make sure they had it, because he really wanted them to have it. And then spent years and years claiming that there was a massive conspiracy between Trump and Russia. And then when that didn't work out, he changed his narrative and he accuses someone like Jeff Girth of missing the point, which he himself was doggedly promoting until it collapsed.
He thought he was going to get another award. What did he get? A Pulitzer for reporting that Romney said there's like, what did he say? Makers and takers, or like there's a 52% who are.
All right. 46. Yeah.
46. It wasn't even like, it was just he helped the Democrats beat Mitt Romney, who was always part of the regime. Like it wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but David Corn didn't do anything. It was just some guy in the catering crew had filmed those comments of Mitt Romney and he just gave them to David Corn. It wasn't like some great investigative feat or that he cultivated jittery sources, found whistleblowers. And then he thought that was going to happen again because he got some dodgy dossier handed to him in a Washington hotel. And now he's pretending like it never happened. Like at least his co-author of their book, Russian Roulette, Michael Isikoff, has partially acknowledged fault for pushing the Steele dossier. I don't think David Corn has ever done that.
No, of course not. No. He just, as you showed there, he just calls it unconfirmed, which is so funny. Michael Isikoff is the only mainstream adjacent reporter I can think of who pushed the collusion innuendo, who's basically apologized for it. He's backed off of that. He still pushes this line that Russia attacked our election, and he dismissed. When I interviewed him, he dismissed the fact that CrowdStrike, which is the Clinton contractor that generated the Russian hacking allegations, he dismissed the fact that they had privately admitted there was no evidence that Russia hacked the DNC. He said, "Who cares?" But he'll get there, I'm sure, one day, just like he did on collusion. And I'm certainly still on that case, but. And of course, that's the part that still needs reckoning. That's the last pillar of Russiagate standing. Nobody tries to argue now that there was a conspiracy between Trump and Russia. The P-tape was real. But there still is this canard out there that Russia waged this massive, sophisticated interference campaign. And that one hasn't been completely destroyed yet. I mean, it has in our spaces, but in the mainstream it hasn't. But I think as more information comes out, it will.
Well, I just want to make one more point about this, which is that this 24,000 word piece, I'm glad you're interviewing Jeff Girth about it. Props to him for doing it. I remember being at the Collision event in Toronto, which was the predecessor to Web Summit, where we got to be among all these mainstream journalists. And I went to some of the seminars, and I heard the editor-in-chief of ProPublica, which is like a CJR style legacy publication, complain in a sort of passing remark that we didn't get the Russia story right. He basically said we blew it, but there's no accountability, and nobody actually at the time tried to do anything about it. Where was the 24,000 word takedown when it mattered? No one would do it because they would have been accused of basically being traitors, pro-Trump, Putin lovers. So the press is totally cowardly, even in attempting to set the record straight, and no one will be held accountable. I mean, we have fake story after fake story pushing the Hamilton 68 bot list. None of those stories have been taken down. Mother Jones said they'd look into their fake stories. David Korn published a fake story about New Knowledge, like based on New Knowledge's Alabama Russian playbook campaign. He isn't taking that down. There's no one on the Mother Jones board who's willing to look at this and say, maybe David Korn just lied and lied and lied and published a string of fake stories for years, and we need to do something about this. And it just it's taking them years. Like, it kind of reminds me of how like white people like black music only from 40 years ago, or certain of them, it like becomes like safe to like Public Enemy now. But at the time it was kind of like really like, oh man, this is frightening.
Yeah. I don't want to fight the power.
Now it's like, yeah, let's fight the power by
yeah. Well, listen, Max, on that point about the Hamilton 68, I mean, that's an example of why the Grayzone is important and is one of the few outlets that does its job. Because back in 2017, you were writing about a Hamilton 68, the supposed dashboard that tracks Russian bots. You pointed out it was a neocon scam. And what did the Twitter files just confirm? Matt Taibbi put it out recently, that Hamilton 68 was a neocon scam. And we know that because he got the list of the supposed Russian bots that Hamilton 68 was keeping track of. And it was ridiculous. There were real people on there like Joe Loria of Consortium News. And this is obvious at the time. You called it out. And, this is the case where, it takes a few years, but the proof, the concrete, like the hard evidence, the smoking gun does come out. Although it was obvious at the time. But that's just another validation of all the work that we've done in trying to challenge this scam.